Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to discuss the election results and what these trends show us about the trajectory of the United States, but more importantly, about the citizenry thereof. So there are a few take-homes from watching things unfold over the past 2 days. The first is that the Republican Party is very much bipolar in what it would like to be and what part of the constituents that comprise the Republican Party want it to be, and then really in actuality how it manifests. Also, the electorate itself has fundamentally changed, and the reason why people showed up at the poll is actually pretty troubling and should be alarming. So let's work backwards here. Mainstream media reported that, I saw this on MSNBC, I saw this on Fox, that one of the key reasons why people showed up at the polls was because of the threat to democracy. This was not insubstantial, by the way. I think this was in some cases like more than half of the electorate said that democracy was a reason that they showed up. That should trouble the living daylights out of you, because we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional representative republic. Democracy is not mentioned in our founding documents. We are not a democracy. And the very fact that the majority of people showing up at the polls think that we are should trouble you. Because what that means is that people are getting dumber and more politically active. Bad combination. The founding fathers actually were very much against democracies because they recognized that democracies ultimately devolve into totalitarianism. Most people, in the grand scheme of things, do not want to be self-governing. They want to be autocrats. They want to tell other people what to do, or they desperately crave being told what to do. That seems extreme, Patriot Nurse. How could you say such a thing? Why don't you have a rosy view of humanity? Because the vast majority of humanity exists to do the will of others who are either smarter or stronger than they are. That's a fact. The structure of government that the founders gave us, the representative republic, recognizes that people should be self-determining, but that there are certain non-negotiables. And those non-negotiables include life, liberty, and property. Democracies exist to use the mob mobilized to deconstruct, to destroy, and to outright confiscate life, liberty, and property from other people. The very fact that the majority of Americans showed up to the polls thinking that they're doing so safeguarding democracy, that should trouble the living daylights out of you. It's also one of the reasons why there wasn't this huge, ginormous red wave that people were expecting, because the electorate has fundamentally shifted. People don't want a smaller government. As a matter of fact, when you look, I was looking at the Fox News polls about what people said the role of government should be, and I think it was 60-something% of them said that the role of government should be the government should do more, not less. That should trouble you. Most people want less freedom by that metric alone. They either want less freedom or they're too stupid to realize that what they are saying equals less freedom for them. I don't know which is more troubling, but it's not reassuring. It's not a sign that all is going to be well. And it's not a sign that the Republican Party is the vehicle through which to accomplish that at all. There are certain winners, obviously, through the night. DeSantis in Florida, a lot of people who escaped other more totalitarian, COVID-related restrictive states over the past 2 years and who fled to Florida, refugeed to Florida, they obviously valued the role of Governor DeSantis and the role of other people in public service roles in safeguarding the rights and liberties of Floridians. So that was a positive. But something that's very interesting to me, particularly as regards Georgia and the Georgia elections, you had a pretty significant chasm of people who showed up to vote for Governor Kemp and then who either did not participate or who did not vote for the corresponding Republican candidate for Senate. This to me says something much deeper. People showed up to vote for the local elections. And I saw a few interviews with people in Georgia specifically who expressed such sentiments, that they showed up to vote for local elections and for things that had in their mind, direct impact upon them, but things associated with the feds, they didn't care about, or they weren't particularly convinced by the arguments of people running for those offices. The schism between state and federal government is something that stands out to me more than anything in this race. People have less and less confidence in the feds. This is why they are essentially not participating in elections associated with the federal government's infrastructure. They either don't care, have no confidence in it, or know that their vote is not going to be legitimately counted. It's one of those three. So when I'm looking at the lessons so far, the lessons to me reinforce, you could say they reinforce my own viewpoint discrimination and personal bias, which is that balkanization of the United States is inevitable and probably the best thing. We are not united. That's a farce. We are not a united group of people. We don't want the same thing. Clearly, we don't all want the same thing. In fact, a majority of Americans don't want what people who founded this nation wanted. They don't want to be left alone. They don't want smaller government, and they don't want a representative republic form of government based on polls alone. So you could say, for instance, like, oh, well, they just didn't know what they were saying. That's troubling in itself right there, that people are that ignorant or stupid that they don't know what the question is being asked, and they don't know what the fundamental civic responsibility is as part of the United States, as part of a representative republic. I mean, that seems a little harsh, but let's call a spade a spade. If that is the case, then how does that affect the calculus of people who do want constitutional government, who do want limited government, separation of powers, who do want to be left alone, who do want life, liberty, and property, who do want smaller government, less government, and fewer stupid people making decisions that are going to directly affect their lives? The only way that you get this is with smaller state governments, with secessionary movements, and with balkanization. Eventually, this is going to happen. The Anti-Federalists told us so. For whatever reason, we as a people are becoming less and less tolerant to this idea, because I want to say that the ratings were down 30% compared to other midterms. People are unhooking from the idea that any of this matters. If that is the case, and people have ceased either believing that government is functioning, they have ceased participating in government, or we have more people who are participating that have nefarious intentions or who are outright operating out of ignorance, then like both of these come to the same conclusion. That is, good people need to prepare to be relatively self-sufficient and operate in a world that is returning to feudalism. A place where you have enclaves of order, enclaves of stability, and massive swaths of anarchy and of no government. Anarchy is not an ultimate freedom bastion that people think it is. Absolutely not. From no government comes total government. There has not been one single instance throughout modern recorded history of a place and time where people who had no governmental structure whatsoever were able to maintain peace and not devolve into the worst forms of being. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. But government is, in the words of George Washington, it's much like fire is a fearful servant and a cruel master. There's a balance in these things, and unfortunately, we are living in a world where people want to be slaves. So the people who don't want to be slaves are going to become more and more isolated, but also by virtue of that isolation and people who are thinking forward into the future, because we can see this, we're going to be much better suited when this thing resets, and it is going to reset. The good old days of the United States are gone. The good old days of stability in a post-World War II order of happy free trade and everything is good and goods are cheap and labor is that's gone. It's not coming back, and no amount of participating in elections at the federal level is going to bring this back. We are experiencing a situation brought about by massive technological change, massive instability in the world. Really, population collapse is another part of this, right? So if there's anything that I took away from the election, It's that preparedness and focusing on being self-sufficient and on not relying, not only not relying upon the government, but not relying upon the good sense of the massive swaths of people who happen to share our borders. That's a sad reality, and that's the case. That's really what I've taken away from this, that being focused on living my own life in accordance with the principles of Scripture and being obedient to God's law, being obedient to the will of the Lord, that's where the safe space is. I have no confidence in any political entity as a vehicle for salvation. That's gone. Forget that. No, it never has been. But what I do know is that my destiny is governed by the Almighty. And I know that if He has given me a set of His rules to live by and I live by them, the worst case scenario, I go through this life in much more peace and order than people who decide that they're going to write their own rules and live by chaos. And in the best case scenario, I actualize the fullest potential that God has given me and the destiny that He has set down in front of me before the foundation of time to live. So I know how I'm going to live, and I know the lessons that I've taken away. I'm hoping that we all can draw strength from this, to not have our confidence in a political exercise, but to have our confidence in the Almighty. I hope that was helpful for y'all today. If you did enjoy the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also support me on Patreon, subscribe to our cryptocurrency and PayPal. I'll have links below. If you want to train with me also, you can train with me online. And I have 2 classes that are up on the schedule right now. One is for Keller, Texas, which is in December. It's coming up in about a month. And then also I launched a new class in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is the Herbal Theory and Preparation with Patriot Nurse. There are mandatory prereqs. You have to have either completed the online course or have taken and successfully completed Medical Prep 101 and 201, my in-person class. So that's up on the website. I do not have, I think, but 5 spots left for that class. So if you want to get in now. I hope the video was helpful for y'all. Have a very blessed weekend. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.